Welcome to Ghostly Whispers. Have you ever heard the tale of the Serbian dancing lady? Legend says she roams the streets of Belgrade, enchanting anyone who dares to look her way. But her dance comes with a chilling twist. What secrets does she hold, and why do so many fear her? Join me as we dive into this mysterious story, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more spine-tingling tales. I don't believe in ghosts or urban legends, but walking down Belgrade's deserted streets that night, something felt off. The Serbian dancing lady. What a hilarious joke, right? People on TikTok reported seeing her alone, dancing in the streets and turning around streetlights with a knife. A legend says she could run after anyone who got too close, but I told myself it was just a joke. I'm Lucia, a journalist. I enjoy debunking hoaxes like this the most. Naturally, I decided to follow up on this story after it went viral in cyberspace. It was almost midnight, and I was packing my bags with a camera in hand, hoping to capture whatever hopes might be in the frame. The streets of Belgrade were deathly quiet beneath me, a stillness that reached down to my skin. As I made my way down to the alley where she had last been seen, only 2 stray cats passed. The air was heavy and cold, seeping into my bones as I tried to shake off the nerves that had built up inside. Every step I took on the cobblestone was audible. I arrived at the alley and paused, taking out my camera. Let's see if this ghost lady's real. I told myself this was primarily to keep from freaking out. I started filming street scenes and speaking into the camera. Nothing so far. I probably heard it just then. Very soft music coming from nowhere and everywhere. With its breath, the wind carried it. My chest tightened as I gradually turned my head. It was then that I noticed her. She stood at the end of the road, where it appeared that a dangling street lamp provided just enough light to illuminate her position. The girl danced, there's no other way to describe it. No, she swayed in a long, sweeping gown, her movements slow and eerie, as if lost in another world. My breath got caught in my throat. No, this is not real. It was not possible, but it happened. She spun, her arms gracefully weaving around her body, but the movement was stilted and overly conscious. My hands shook as I raised the camera and focused on her. The lens struggled to find its focus, but it was sufficient. She was a woman, and she was dancing. Then, she abruptly came to a stop. She looked up at me as if she had just noticed I was staring at her. My heart was racing, and everything screamed for me to flee, but my feet remained firmly planted on the ground. She sat there in the shadows, staring at me. She hid her face behind her hair, but I could feel someone watching me. The air was thick and suffocating as I stood there, afraid to move. Then she began walking towards me. The dancing was over, and the fluid movement was gone. It was now a slow, deliberate walk, as if she were heading straight for me. I tried to take one step back, but my legs wouldn't move. Was this real? Was this some insane trick? Looking down at her hand, I saw a knife glinting in the dim light. Then something inside me snapped. My head was screaming at me to move. I turned around and fled, my feet pounding on the pavement and my heart beating in my ears. It was as if the sound of my heart beating in sync created an urgency that drowned her out. However, beneath it I could hear her footsteps. Slumbering, slow, deliberate, and steady, as if she knew exactly where I was going. I glanced over my shoulder. She was still there, darkly silhouetted, moving swiftly toward me, the knife catching every step of light. I ran faster, turning down random streets, and my gasping breath came raggedly as I attempted to shake her. Whenever I thought I'd lost her, I could hear her softly tapping her shoes on the cobblestones. I ran down the alley, crouching behind a dumpster to catch my breath. My hands shook while I held my camera. I tried to remain still. I needed proof that this was not a joke. I pressed record again and peered over the dumpster. Again, the overhanging wall obscured her face, but I was confident she saw me. I waited, breathing to ensure she didn't come any closer. We remained in this pose for a few agonizing moments, as if I were crouching in the shadows and she was staring directly at me. Then she slowly turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness. Again I waited, my heart racing, unable to decipher what had happened. Was it finished? I did not know. My legs shook as I stumbled out of the alley, and it took everything I had to stand up. The streets were empty again and the morbid music had stopped. Had I dreamed it? No, I couldn't do that because it was on film. I returned to my apartment and played the tape again. She was dancing and walking straight toward me, but something made my stomach drop. As she danced under the streetlight in the video, she looked behind me rather than at me. A shiver ran down my spine, and before I could react, my phone vibrated. My screen displayed a text message from an unknown caller. "You should have left her alone." A shiver ran down my neck. I was not alone any longer. In late October, my girlfriend Stacy and I took a road trip to Stowe, Vermont. We rented a cabin from the Glamping Hub website, about a 20-minute ride from the village. It was on a lovely hilltop with a view of the fall foliage, which was the primary reason for our trip. We rented from Thursday night to Sunday. The cabin used a code lock system. The owner sent me the combination before we arrived, and it worked perfectly. We stepped inside and looked around. It was nice and cozy. Almost everything was made of wood and had an old-fashioned country feel. It even had a distinct odor that reminded us of a country log cabin. There was one bathroom, a small kitchen, 3 bedrooms, and a living room. There was plenty of space for both of us, one TV in the master bedroom and one in the living room. However, there was another door that was locked, which we assumed led to the 3rd bedroom listed in the advertisement, but we had no idea why. It wasn't a big deal, and we thought the owner had some personal items in there. He knew it was just us two. We stored most of our luggage in the 2nd bedroom, ensuring the main bedroom remained clean and tidy. After arriving late on Thursday, we went straight to dinner in town. Then we took a short walk around the village before returning to the cabin. We went to bed after watching a movie too late. The next day was cloudy and chilly. We went hiking along some dirt trails in the woods near the cabin, which was very relaxing. When I returned to the cabin, I showered and changed out of my hiking clothes into something more appropriate for a cozy restaurant. When I left the shower, Stacy told me she had heard something in the bedroom with the locked door. She stated that it sounded like a radio or a recording. To listen, I put my ear to the door, but it was silent. Stacy was dismayed when I knocked on the door. She told me to stop because the thought of knocking on the door to see if anyone was inside scared her. I did it only to tease her. While Stacy was in the shower, I sat in the living room, watching whatever I could find on television. That's when I thought I'd barely heard anything from inside that room. I turned off the TV and went back to put my ear to the door. I did hear a slight speaking noise that sounded like it came from a radio. I messaged the host and then called him to tell him about it. He said he wasn't sure why his wife would have locked the door, but she could have left some of her belongings inside. He said he'd ask his wife about the speaker noise. Stacy and I went out for lunch after she took a shower. I didn't tell her about hearing the noise because I didn't want to make her uncomfortable. It was apparent to me that the guy's wife had left an electronic device in there. We visited Harrison's, a restaurant on Main Street. After that, we just drove around the area, stopping at a park to relax. That's when the host called and said his wife told him she didn't lock anything in there, so he has no idea why or what we're hearing. He offered to come by and unlock the door and check it out, which I accepted. With that, we returned to the house. It took about 20 minutes to drive back. When we returned, Stacy let herself in and collapsed on the couch, exhausted from eating and walking around. I listened to the room again. I still heard the same sounds as before. I told Stacy, "Hang on, I'll be right back," as I walked outside. I had no idea why I hadn't thought of doing this sooner. I approached the locked door from the bedroom window. There were no curtains or anything to block the view inside. I was horrified as I stood on tiptoes and looked into the room. I noticed this grossly skinny, tall, 20-something-year-old guy in a hoodie dancing slowly in the middle of the room. In his hand, he held what appeared to be a small radio. He quickly noticed me at the window and came to a halt, smiling at me. I screamed Stacy's name and yelled, "Get out of the house." She met me at the door, troubled and perplexed. I told her, "Just get into the car." I grabbed our 2 bags, leaving any stray items behind, threw them in the trunk and drove away. I then called the host and instructed him to call the cops because someone was inside the house. An hour later, while we were sitting in town, I received a call from the host who informed me that the police had arrived and that the 3rd bedroom was open, but no one was inside. However, they discovered several empty bags of chips under the bed, indicating someone was present. We returned to collect our remaining belongings and worked out a refund with the host and website. Of course, we did not remain there after that. We stayed at a nearby motel until Sunday, then returned home. But I'll tell you what I saw through that window, that dancing, skinny figure. I couldn't sleep for nights, especially knowing he was there the entire time we were there, even while we were sleeping. After a long, rainy Friday night in mid-October, drinks were involved. I attended this Halloween-themed housewarming party with all of my friends. I didn't wear a costume because I came straight from work and was exhausted. I took Adderall to wake myself up before leaving, and I stopped at a gas station to get some White Claws. There were about 25 to 30 people there. I had to meet some people I had never met before. All of this socializing and drinking was keeping me awake, but deep down I just wanted to go home and sleep. Working in a hospital requires long hours and an unpredictable sleep schedule. I eventually saw an opportunity to say an Irish goodbye through the backyard. I couldn't even bring myself to say goodbye to 20 people. I should never have driven home with alcohol in my system, and I never recommend that anyone do so. Always call an Uber. I ran through the rain, got into my Subaru, and started driving. I was not in the mood to listen to music. I just wanted peace, to hear the rain on the windshield. Then, while driving down a quiet residential street, I noticed a girl walking in the rain. No umbrella, no jacket, nothing. As I approached her, she stopped walking and looked at my car. I sighed as I debated whether to keep going, and my more compassionate side advised me to pull over. I rolled down the window and asked if she needed a ride. Without responding, she climbed into the back seat of my car. I wondered where she was going. She said, "Just down to the end of this road." So I took her there. I stopped at the second stop sign and asked her why she was in the rain. She explained that she was hurrying to get back and did not want to call a cab. I said it was understandable, joking about how expensive taxis and Ubers are. I introduced myself as Jake, and she said, "Allie, thanks for picking me up." Following that, no further words were exchanged. I kept going down the street until I saw a dead-end sign approaching. I stopped at the final sign and inquired, "Is it past the dead-end sign?" She didn't respond. My heart sank as I looked in the rearview mirror about halfway through that small intersection. She was not in the reflection. I slammed on the brakes and turned around, and she wasn't in the back seat. I quickly pulled to the side of the road and stepped out. I hurriedly checked the entire backseat row. She wasn't in the seat or on the floor. I looked down the empty road, illuminated only by the occasional streetlight. No one was in sight, but she couldn't have gotten out of the car because I hadn't heard the door open or close. And there's no way she got out of the car unnoticed. I was beginning to question my sanity. I began feeling around the seat and floor where she sat. It was scorched. It must have been slightly wet from her after being in the rain. I stood in the rain, dumbfounded, confused, and terrified. I looked around again and realized there was a fence to the right of the car right next to where I had pulled over, and beyond the wall was a cemetery. Her response to my question had just dawned on me. When I asked, "Where are you going?" she replied, "Down to the end of this road." I looked towards the cemetery at the end of the road. Then I returned to my car, made a 3-point turn, and hurried home. I don't think I was drunk enough to experience hallucinations.